we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Andy Hum. Yeah, I am Andy Hum. Welcome. This is Gay USA.
Welcome, Andy Hum.
Thank you. Ann Northrup, welcome to you as well.
Yes.
And if you thought you were going to get away from the Malaysia story entirely, we do have one reference to it tonight. But in the headlines this week, Tennessee has been ordered by a federal judge to recognize at least 3 same-sex marriages.
As was predicted by our guest last week, Kate Kendall of the National Center for Lesbian Rights, who sat right here and told us this would happen.
She was a great guest.
In sober news, in the murder of lesbian couple Britney Cosby and Crystal Jackson in Texas, Cosby's anti-gay father is suspected of being involved in killing them.
The infamous Reverend, I use the term advisedly, Fred Phelps of God Hates Fags Ministries is apparently near death.
St. Patrick's Day parades in Boston and New York continue to exclude Irish LGBT groups, and sponsors started to bail out as we continued to protest.
I'll drink to that. An out pro-gay golfer has won a discrimination suit, she's a lesbian, on that basis, against the University of Minnesota, where she was hired to coach.
The Catholic Diocese of Cincinnati has hit a new low in persecuting gay and pro-gay staff at their schools.
We mourn the passing of Chicago lesbian pioneer Vernita Gray, who has died at 65.
And we celebrate the intelligence and vision of the Congressional Black Caucus, which wants U.S. relations with all anti-gay countries reviewed, not just Uganda.
And I will review Bryan Cranston as Lyndon Johnson on Broadway and some gay-themed shows that I saw in London.
Finally, long awaited.
Oh, well. Hold on to your seats.
All right, but let's start a little closer to home in Tennessee first.
Yeah.
It is one of these states where there are various lawsuits pending for marriage rights for same-sex couples and recognition of the out-of-state marriages performed and entered into by same-sex couples.
So there are 3 couples there suing, and federal judge Alita Trauger ordered the state to recognize them. She said that all relevant authority indicates that the plaintiffs are likely to prevail on claims that the anti-recognition law there is unconstitutional.
So her order was that they be recognized immediately, as opposed to the states where judges have ordered marriage but have stayed their decisions pending appeal. This judge said they're going to win on appeal, so you have to recognize them immediately.
The case was brought by Tennessee lawyer Abby Rubenfeld, who used to be the head of Lambda Legal Defense many years ago.
And is the sister of Pee Wee Herman.
Yes, and it was also brought by NCLR, the National Center for Lesbian Rights.
Now, the latest development, the latest development is that the governor of Tennessee has announced that he will appeal this decision. So even though the court has ordered them to recognize these marriages immediately, he is applying for a restraining order or injunction against the enforcement of this order. So these marriages may or may not be recognized immediately, but thank you to the judge for ordering that they should be.
Yeah. Lots of other marriage news. In Florida, the ACLU is challenging for it in federal court for the recognition of legal same-sex marriages from other states.
These marriages involve a lot of cops and firefighters, And, no, wait a minute, that's Indiana. Let me move to that.
There are so many cases to go over this week.
There are. So Florida, ACLU files for 8 couples married elsewhere, and there is another suit in Florida too, I believe. In Indiana, there are now 5 lawsuits.
You can't keep up anymore.
Well, there was one a couple of weeks ago where some independent lawyer and couples filed a suit, and the gay organization said, "Whoa, wait a minute, this is too soon. The legislature is still in session for another week, and they could screw up the constitutional amendment."
So now Lambda has filed a case.
Well, Lambda has filed for 3 couples. The ACLU has filed for another 15 people.
Everybody wants to get into the
cops
act.
And firefighters have filed another suit, and the Indiana gay organizations have now filed their own suit. So it's now 5.
Similarly, in Arizona, there's a new gay marriage suit there from Lambda Legal Defense, because again, the mainstream groups, where there are independent cases, want to get into the act.
Right, there's an independent case pending in Arizona. Lambda is now filed on behalf of many couples and a couple of widows seeking some benefits for them.
San Diego has a suit that's getting ready to go.
I think
not
you mean
San Diego.
South
What did I
Dakota.
say? South Dakota. That's what SD means. But it also means San Diego. They
Well,
have it in San Diego. I don't want to confuse people.
A lesbian couple in South Dakota applied for a marriage license, was rejected, and has announced their plans to go elsewhere to a state that does issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples, apply for one there, get married, and then come back to South Dakota and sue for recognition of their legal marriage, which is exactly what the couples in Tennessee did.
Now, in Illinois, we've got some good news, but we've got some sad news. First of all, on the good side, with DeKalb County, there are now 8 out of the 102 counties that are issuing marriage licenses in Illinois. But sadly, this week, Vernita Gray, who was the plaintiff in the marriage case there in Illinois, has died of cancer. She got the first legal, we got a picture over there with her partner, Pat Ewart, or wife. She got the first legal marriage, they got the first legal marriage license in Illinois. She's a longtime activist in Chicago, set up the first lesbian and gay helpline in Chicago in her own apartment in the early 70s. And
sheltered a lot of LGBT homeless teens, wrote for the Lavender Woman newspaper. She's a member of the Hall of Fame, the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame, has been honored many times. She was a poet, worked for about 15 years as a crime victims assistant for the Chicago Attorney's Office, owned a restaurant.
In addition to her wife, survived by 2 kids and her mother.
But when marriage became legal in Illinois last year, they said it's not going to go into effect till June of 2014. And Vernita and Pat went to court and said Vernita is dying and she can't wait until June to get married. And the court, bless their hearts, saw the righteousness of that and said, this is a hardship case. You can get married right now, and they did, and they became the first legally married same-sex couple in Illinois.
But as we, it does raise an issue for me that's been we've talked about, that the IRS has this 9-month rule for getting your partner's Social Security.
Yes.
You have to have been married for 9 months, and there's questions about whether they're going to do anything about that for gay couples who haven't been able to marry all this time.
Exactly.
Well, that has not been resolved satisfactorily so far.
And, well, it's just been raised, as people have noticed this. In Alabama, a judge has rejected a divorce petition from a lesbian couple who were married in Iowa. He's stuck in the old paradigm that we don't recognize same-sex marriages, therefore, even though you're legally married in Iowa, we will not grant your divorce petition here.
In Kentucky, the governor there is hiring a private firm with your tax dollars there in Kentucky.
But not many of them.
To use in the appeal of this, in order to lose the appeal in the same-sex marriage case, which is what will happen.
He's only put aside.
It's like buying lotto tickets. It's good money after bad.
But it's only $100,000.
Only $100,000. Hey.
Well, maybe he could get it.
I'll take it.
Dan Cathy might give it to him, the head of Chick-fil-A. He made a little announcement this week that he was sorry he had opened his mouth about same-sex marriage. He's not sorry about his opinion. He retains his opinion, But he didn't like all the brouhaha and hot water.
It's
So
also because it's a losing issue for him. It's a bad investment.
yeah, but all those people showed up to buy his chicken.
Like your governor in Kentucky is making a bad investment
Well,
with your money.
Dan, the thinking is that Dan has stopped contributing so much to right-wing organizations, but there is also some question about whether he's just moving the money around. But he did issue a statement of regret.
In Pennsylvania, the case, federal marriage case there goes to trial June 6th in Harrisburg. They're dragging their tails there. The judge in the case, John Jones, is the one who ruled in the intelligent design case in '05.
Are we through with marriage news?
Well, I mean, you could certainly throw this in terms of marriage news, because in California, the teacher who was fired for marrying her partner is suing St. Lucy's Priory in Los Angeles for wrongful, termination.
Firing, yeah.
Yep. This is in Glendora.
I actually thought it was a woman, Kenneth Ben-Como.
Yeah.
I mean, a man.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You said it was a woman.
Oh, right. I was thinking of St. Lucy, I guess.
We'll get we're
Gender.
a little,
What difference does it make?
Confused
We're
today.
all something.
We'll figure this
I'm
out.
a little confused.
All right. Well, also a little confused still is the case in Houston of the murder of Britney Cosby and her girlfriend Crystal Jackson. Brutally murdered, shot, beaten to death, both 24
Yes.
years old, bodies moved and dumped near a dumpster at a restaurant. So they put out a sketch of some unknown assailant they were looking for, but then it turns out that Britney's father is implicated in this. They found a lot of blood in his
James
home.
Cosby.
They found his fingerprint in the blood on them. They found various artifacts that shouldn't have been there that were tied to
Cosby's
him.
mother said that the father was angry about the lesbian relationship. I guess so.
They also found a copy of the Koran in his home, open to a page that supposedly condemned homosexuality.
And I'm not trying to exaggerate here, but all these religions say that Father God is angry at our homosexuality. I mean, it's in their Bibles.
Jesus never said anything.
I said Father God,
Yeah.
not Jesus.
Well, anyway, there's a local news report on the fact that the father is now a suspect in the case. He has not been formally charged, but here's what the local TV news in Houston is saying about this.
In the case of a father arrested in connection with the murder of his daughter and her girlfriend, we've learned detectives have uncovered a key piece of evidence that puts him at the scene where the women's bodies were found. Tim Wetzel joins us in the newsroom with details only on 11 News tonight. Tim?
Yeah, well, detectives say they found James Cosby's thumbprint at the murder scene in Port Bolivar, and when asked how it got there, they say he couldn't give a good answer. Investigators are building their case against James Cosby, and they believe he not only knew about the violent deaths of his daughter and her girlfriend, he tried to cover them up. Their bodies were found near a dumpster in Port Bolivar, but investigators are calling Cosby's Houston home a secondary crime scene. They say inside they recovered several items that could be weapons, including a hammer. According to court documents, detectives searched Cosby's bedroom and found large areas of blood on surfaces throughout. They also noticed a missing window shutter on the home and found a similar shutter covered in blood at the scene where the women's bodies were found. Authorities say Cosby claimed the shutter was missing before he moved in, but when asked how his fingerprint got on the one at the scene, investigators say he could not provide a reason as to why.
He have said it to me, too, a few times, that he didn't like the idea of her being gay.
Britney Cosby's mom told us Cosby was troubled by their daughter's gay relationship with Crystal Jackson. The couple's SUV is still missing, but the court documents also show it was seen on surveillance video traveling both directions on the Bolivar ferry the night of the murder. Investigators believe whoever killed the women used the SUV to transport their bodies and simply dumped them.
Why would you do this? This is your child. This is something we conceived together. Ain't that much hatred in this world to make you just do this.
At this point, Cosby is charged with tampering with evidence, specifically the bodies. Detectives say they are waiting on test results to come back from items taken from his home before they decide whether there might be a murder charge. Live in the newsroom, Tim Wetzel, KHOU 11 News.
They're still looking for the other guy. It may be more than one person involved in doing this murder.
And we're taping on Wednesday, but there were vigils for the murdered women scheduled for across Texas in their memory.
There was also a sad story of a young lesbian, Gabriela Nevarez, 22 years old, shot and killed by police in Sacramento, California. She had had a fight with her grandmother, took her grandmother's car. The grandmother called the cops, reported the car stolen. They chased her. She did not give up easily, ended up ramming their car, and they shot and killed her. Terrible story. All right, well, we are happy to report that the 196 members of Congress, 148 representatives, 47 senators, all Democrats, have written a letter to President Obama asking him to sign an executive order requiring companies that do business with the federal government to not discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity.
Yes.
They
said there's no reason not to do it. But
especially since most of the companies have that policy to begin with.
Especially when Obama supported such an executive order in a 2008 questionnaire when he wanted to be your president.
Well, it is a little mysterious why he hasn't done it. You'd think it wouldn't cost him a lot. You know, the Republicans would yell at him, but they yell at him for everything.
Well, as I said, I would like to get a good look at it and make sure the religious exemption isn't too broad in this thing, because there are a lot of religious contractors.
Reportedly, the religious exemption in the proposed executive order is not as onerous as the one in the Employment Non-Discrimination Act that passed the Senate and would be preferable to that.
So anyway, the pressure is building on Obama around that. And
we're finding more and more reasons that we need this. Now, the good news this week is that pro golfer Katie Britney, who is a friend of mine, and was hired by the University of Minnesota a few years ago to be the coach of the women's golf team, and then was told about 2 weeks or 1 week after she started there by the guy who hired her that she could not talk to the team.
They found out she was a lesbian.
Yes, they did. Because his son-in-law, who worked for them and was given special treatment, told him she was a lesbian because he had ferreted it out. So Katie, I thought in a very gutsy move, sued the university.
Had a big 7-day trial.
Yeah, in fact, it was 9. I just read. I'd made a mistake on that. So we've been waiting months and months and months for the decision. Didn't expect this would necessarily be a win because, you know, they can come up with lots of reasons that they sort of shoved her off to the edge. But the judge writes this brilliant decision that calls all these people liars.
Yeah, it is. I was a former city human rights commissioner here in New York. I've always told people it is very hard to prove discrimination. You have to have evidence, but she did.
She did, and her lawyer did a great job, and Kate Kendall of NCLR helped out behind the scenes and helped him understand the ins and outs of this sexual orientation discrimination situation, and she won. Now, will the university appeal? I would have to put my money on yes, because they don't like to lose these cases, and they'd rather delay any payout and not have this as a stain on their record. But Katie won, and the judgment is great. And it's just a classic example of how we get discriminated against in employment, and should set her up as a poster child for this.
Right.
Along with.
And we're hoping for justice for transgender troops. There was a commission on it led by, of all people, Joycelyn Elders, one of my heroes, the former Surgeon General of the United States. The judgment of the commission is that there's no compelling reason for the ban. It's expensive, it's damaging, it's unfair. Stop it. Why can't Obama do an executive order on that?
Exactly, and deprives 15,000 currently serving transgender people of medical care and other benefits. So that's an estimate by the Palm Center at the University of California at San Francisco. So it's great that that report came out, but the White House was asked about it, and they said, we know nothing. We have no plans to do anything about this.
I wonder if they have any comment on what the Cincinnati Archdiocese is doing.
Yes.
They have a new teacher contract there with a morality clause that allows the firing of not just any LGBT employee, anyone who supports gay rights. It's just like Prop 6 in California from 1978 or 9, right? What year was that? That Ronald Reagan opposed and was defeated.
And they're trying to cover all their bases. You can also be fired if you are found to have sex out of wedlock or support having sex out of wedlock.
Does that include masturbation? Because that's a mortal sin too, and I'm not exaggerating.
It's not delineated in what I read. Also, if you engage in or support surrogacy, in vitro fertilization, abortion, of course.
Who's going to work there?
Well,
people need to rebel against this stuff. People need to get together and say, together, none of us are signing this thing. You have to do. That's the only way to stop this stuff.
Well, but
how desperate can you be for a job?
These schools are losing these cases. As we have discussed, the only way that these Catholic schools win these cases is if it's a religion teacher or something.
Right. Ministerial function.
So to write this...
unless the Employment Non-Discrimination Act passes in its present form, will they'll all get a pass.
Yes, the religious exemption is so broad, it will now encompass all these things.
And the ENDA just got a big boost from vulture capitalist Paul Singer, who donated $750,000 to Americans for Workplace Opportunity, led by the Human Rights Campaign.
Scary.
Yeah, it's a bad bill.
Yeah.
We're on the warpath against that.
And a couple of other school notes. Sheridan High School in Arkansas is trying to take out of its yearbook an interview with a gay student, Taylor Ellis.
Well, they agreed to do 6 profiles of students, and he talked about being gay.
Yeah.
So they said, let's get rid of all the profiles. That's what they did.
Yep, well.
Oh, they were trying to protect him from bullying. Now, so let's tell the whole country he's gay.
Yeah, I don't think that'll fly.
And in California, the Equality California, they want to ban judges from becoming scoutmasters, and they also want to take away tax advantages for the scouts.
Yes, because they're a discriminatory organization, so public officials should, just as they shouldn't belong to discriminatory private clubs, so they should not be scoutmasters.
One more thing on religion. The New York Civil Liberties Union settled an old case with the Salvation Army from 2004, ensuring that they won't use government funds to discriminate or indoctrinate. The church had been demanding that workers on these contracts share their religious beliefs, but if you get government money, you can't do that on those contracts.
It was egregious.
Yeah.
And it was a new policy.
Yeah.
It had gotten worse over the years. Well, I got a couple other religion stories. In Massachusetts, the Attorney General Martha Coakley, you remember her for losing the Senate race a few years ago, is supporting a gay couple against the Catholic Diocese of Worcester. This was the one where the diocese did not want to sell a house to a gay couple on the grounds that there might be gay weddings there someday.
Well, you think you're laughing?
No,
but you and I are responsible for a city government that buys Catholic school spaces and then has to take the kids to use for public schools, and then has to take the kids off campus to a trailer to give them sex education.
It is unbelievable that the Catholic religion not only wants to control its own schools, property, parishioners, churches, hospitals, but when they sell these properties, they want to continue to control them. Yeah. But that is the system here in New York, and it is what they tried to do with this house in Worcester, and that's where it stands.
Well, I guess the big religious story...
I'm sorry. I just want to quote Attorney General Martha Coakley. She says there is no religious exemption for public commercial sale of real estate.
Right.
And non-discrimination laws trump the religious rights.
Please.
Yeah.
Well, the big religion story in many ways was the St. Patrick's Day parade this week. The good news, well, we'll get to that. But in Boston, well, actually, there was some good news in Boston and New York, where we're still excluded from marching, carrying any kind of an identifying banner. In Boston, a deal fell through and Mayor Walsh up there boycotted, but Sam Adams Beer pulled out as a sponsor, as did Gillette and Westin hotels and a bunch of radio stations that used to have floats in the thing. Yep. So these parades are getting isolated.
I think this year was a big step forward on this.
Huge.
I think it's
We don't mind saying we were part of a committee that worked on this.
for
Do we?
New York,
Yes.
right? No, I don't mind saying that.
No.
We've worked on it for many years. Been arrested many times.
Right.
Some
I haven't been
picture
arrested.
of me from 1997 getting arrested was
I almost got
floating around
arrested by a
Facebook.
cop who wanted to take my press pass for not getting off the street. But anyway, in New York,
But it does feel like, this may be the last year of some of this. I think in Boston.
Maybe in Boston. New
Yeah.
York, they're really hard.
Yes, they are.
In New York, Heineken pulled out, and then Guinness was threatened. Now, GLAAD was involved
Should
with
I
this.
interrupt you for
Sure.
one more Boston point?
Sure.
There was the diversity float in Boston.
Yes.
Gay guys who live in Southie, which is the traditionally
Who wore
conservative.
some rainbow stuff.
Well, they put up a float that had rainbow balloons or something, and they wore rainbow scarves and pins and stuff. They didn't use the word gay. Everybody criticized them for
You
that.
see a rainbow on an Irish parade, you're thinking of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
I don't think so. Not these days. There was a lot of publicity about it. They were very openly gay in
Okay.
all their interviews and stuff, but still, it was at best a halfway
So,
measure.
anyway, GLAAD got involved with this, and I can be critical of GLAAD, but they really went after the sponsors in Boston and New York, and they got Heineken to pull out, and then they said to Guinness
In New York.
in New York, and then Guinness beer, which is as Irish as they come, as someone told me, they wouldn't do it. So they said, okay, we'll have a Guinness dump at the Stonewall Inn, and Guinness said, we're done. We're through.
So they pulled out as a sponsor, and they are, I understand, the biggest or one of the biggest
Yep.
sponsors of the New York Parade.
That may sink it. Ford Motor Company continues to be a sponsor, gave a very ridiculous statement trying to defend themselves. Quinnipiac College is a secular college, and they're one of the biggest sponsors of this. They should
Let's look
stop.
at some of the pictures of the
Yeah.
protest and the parade.
That's the press conference with Amaya Gelman of Irish Queers, one of our leaders there, who, because the big theme that she developed this year was we've got to get police and firefighters and those people to stop marching in uniform. And even though Mayor de Blasio in New York would not march, his police commissioner did, and he allowed people, that's Bratton, the police commissioner, with his wife.
Very sorry to see Ricky Kleeman and his wife marching. That's a shame.
Indefensible.
Yeah.
And and that's Alan Roscoff, who said that Bratton, a longtime gay activist, who said Bratton's message to New York gays is drop dead. They're not considering our equality, and there are, you see rows and rows of police marching in the parade constantly. Let's get to that. Some of these
watching.
a lot of these,
signs.
that was the big boycott homophobia banner by Gilbert Baker. Donna Acito, by the way, took these pictures, most of these pictures, not this one. But there's the Emerald Society marching past the banner, and that was a 2-page spread in the Daily News.
Yeah. Gilbert's banners have been just brilliant over the last year in the Russia demos and Uganda and now for St. Patrick's.
Now, most all elected officials boycotted the parade, but interestingly, none of them joined us at the demonstration, even though they
Next year.
Well, the Irish Prime Minister Enda Kenny marched despite protests from a lot of people in Ireland and here. I said city personnel marched in uniform. The protest was much larger. The crowds at the parade were much smaller. It was very cold also.
Yes. Look, I think it's important to remind people. The right wing defends this parade as this is a parade about Ireland, not about
culture
Irish,
and heritage, but
not
it's not
about sex.
But they have defined themselves as a private religious procession that must exclude gays, even though there's nothing in Catholic doctrine that says that.
They went to court to get this declared a religious Catholic event, not an Irish event.
Correct.
If they were celebrating Irish heritage and culture, they would be allowing everyone in the parade because in Ireland, out gay groups with banners have marched for 10 years in cities all over Ireland.
Well, the great Malachi McCourt says, St. Patrick drove the snakes out of Ireland and they all came here and became conservatives.
And the parades are now inclusive in Fort Lauderdale, in San Francisco, in Syracuse, New York.
Didn't I hear Chicago?
Possibly. It's basically everywhere but New York and Boston.
Yeah. Well, and the Bronx.
Well, that's New York.
Well, yes. Well, it's part of New York. Cardinal Dolan here, the bumptious cardinal we have, said, I wish I had this tape. thousands of gays marched, and I'd boycott if they were not allowed to march. He said, I know some of them. He's a gas bag. All he has to do is show some Christian compassion and say, just like the Pope says, who am I to judge? There's no Catholic doctrine against an identified gay group marching in this thing. I mean, the worst thing that we're up against in this fight is people saying, you want to carry gay rights signs and cause signs. We are treated as a cause,
right,
as opposed to people. Police and military are treated, it's fine.
Yeah. But a friend of mine's making a documentary about the elite right-wing evangelical colleges, Wheaton College in Illinois, to be specific. And I saw a trailer from this, and there's a woman in there who says, look, these right-wingers, these evangelicals, they are not willing to cross the line. They are not going to show compassion. They are not willing to endorse homosexuality. It is a step too far for them right now.
Well, I mean, even many of them, and we can think of some of the worst ones, have had to temper some of their rhetoric. Not Scott Lively, who marched in the Boston parade.
They temper their rhetoric in the sense that they say, we don't hate the people, we love everybody, we just, can't approve of the lifestyle.
But not the only real true Christian, Fred Phelps, who we understand, we got a picture of him there, 84 years old, from the Westboro Baptist Church, God Hates Fags Ministry. We understand he's near death. But what we've read about him in the context of these stories is that little church, there's only about 70 members, purged him as a member. They excommunicated him because he was asking them to be nicer to each other, not to gays, but to each other. They don't like that. So Fred Phelps, I'm going to miss him. He's been the best thing that ever happened to the movement because he really is honest about his bigotry.
I'd like to think he's outlived his usefulness.
No.
We'll see. In Montana, the Supreme Court there made an interesting decision, not unlike one we talked about from Virginia last week. There was a Lutheran church there that had a split among its parishioners over the pro-gays and the anti-gays. And the anti-gays left the church, and they were 71% of the parishioners, and they wanted to hold on to the property of the church. And the court ruled in favor of the 29% who were pro-gay who stayed on the grounds that the church law requires a 90% vote split to be able to retain the property.
It's almost like consensus.
Their rules worked against them.
Well, in Virginia, the person who rules over the Democratic Party there now is the mayor of Richmond, Dwight Jones, who's an opponent of same-sex marriage. But he told the LGBT caucus that, you don't see me out there railing against same-sex marriage, and they decided to support him anyway.
Well, I think since all the statewide officials there are now pro-gay Democrats, they were throwing a bone to the religious community, and I think that this guy will not be able to promote an anti-gay agenda.
In South Carolina, someone with an anti-gay agenda who's challenging Senator Lindsey Graham in the Republican Party, Dave Feliciano in the GOP primary, called Graham ambiguously gay.
Not so ambiguous, perhaps.
Right.
In the District of Columbia, out gay council member David Catania, who used to be a Republican and rejected the Republican Party some years ago in a very wonderful move of standing up for us, is going to run for mayor.
Yep.
We'll
is he an independent now? Or is
I
he
think so.
He's moved around.
I think so. And we were worried that Mississippi would pass the Religious Freedom Bill.
Yep.
I may even predicted they would, but in fact they stalled it, and they've sent it back to committee. They've gutted the bill. It may come back again, or it may not. But they got more scared than I thought they would.
In Puerto Rico, a former senator, Roberto Arango, who had resigned over nude pictures of himself on a gay website in 2011, has confirmed that he is gay. Now, when he was in the Senate, he voted against LGBT rights.
Yeah.
He's out now. I don't know if he's pro-gay, though.
In Phoenix, transgender woman Monica Jones was arrested for walking down the street.
Yes.
Charged with manifestation with intent to prostitute, because she was in the wrong neighborhood. And she got a lot of publicity. She went on MSNBC. She really put herself out there. And as a result, her trial has been postponed as the public is fighting back.
You know, I'm on the board of New Alternatives for LGBT Youth, run by Kate Barnhart, and she has a client, a lot of transgender young clients. They get arrested for sitting on a stoop eating a cup of noodles.
Exactly.
Cops come along and say you're soliciting, you're a prostitute, just because you're a transgender person in public. That's what happens. It's outrageous. And by the way, we're having a little meet and greet at New Alternatives for Homeless LGBT Youth at St. John's Church, Lutheran Church, there in the Village, right off Sheridan Square. You probably know it. It's not a fundraiser. Anybody can come and just learn about the organization at 6:30 this Friday, March, whatever that is. What is that?
21st.
Correct.
Okay. And congratulations to Judith Levy, out lesbian, confirmed 97-0 by the United States Senate as a federal judge for the Eastern District of Michigan.
And the Department of Health and Human Services says that the Affordable Health Care Act bars insurers from discriminating against same-sex couples. Okay.
All right. International news. Uganda-related news. Frank Mugisha of Sexual Minorities of Uganda, great leader, gave an interview this week that said gay people in Uganda are in hiding, they're fleeing, they're under attack,
Terrible.
they're suicidal. Things are really bad there.
Now, the United States has not renewed a contract with the Ministry of Health to fund HIV/AIDS efforts there. Now, some people are saying this is over the anti-gay law. Some people say it just expired. The CDC gives them $3.9 million, and PEPFAR gives them $485 million in U.S. aid.
Look, it's very dicey, and people are not happy about the fact that when you want to punish a country, what you do is take away the AIDS money.
Well,
take away the military funding, for God's sake.
Well, they should give the money to the local activists.
Yes.
The RPF AIDS Foundation in Uganda said that they had to abandon building a hospital because of the new anti-gay law. They have had to go underground, an AIDS group.
Yep. Because, of course, the other part of this is that when you condemn homosexuality, you drive a lot of people away from testing and treatment.
Well, John Kerry's trying to fix that. He wants to send U.S. scientists to discuss homosexuality with the Ugandan president. And he says that President Museveni has agreed, but the thing is, his own scientists have already given him pretty good information that was distorted by the parliament. So, and U.S. scientists have already said, don't confuse people with the facts.
It's a political decision on his part.
Right.
If he thinks that he gains ground by listening to our scientists and claiming they've convinced him of something, then he'll do that. But if he thinks that his political future lies in homophobia, then he'll do that.
But, the Congressional Black Caucus, which is a great ally of the LGBT community, has taken notice of all this fuss around Uganda and Nigeria, justly so, and they're saying, well, if we're going to review relations with Uganda and Nigeria, we want you to review relations with all 70 countries that have laws against gay people, including some have the death penalty. So I think that's right on.
Absolutely. And there's one more terrible footnote to this. You know how the Uganda newspaper Red Pepper published the pictures and names of
200 homos.
Yeah, except their original list was not quite 200. But they published these pictures. You know where they got those pictures?
Yeah, from the Advocate in New York. Not New York, America. Because the Advocate had done a story about out people in
Uganda.
Nigeria,
so they just
all ends
picked
up
it
on the
up.
internet anyway.
So the author of the Advocate story wants to sue because they did steal the material from a copyrighted magazine. The Advocate is reportedly reluctant to get involved. I don't know if that's because they think they won't win or I don't know what.
We don't talk about Japan too much on this show, but a new poll there says 52% do not want same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
And there is no relationship recognition whatsoever over there for same-sex couples.
We are as fascinated and horrified as everyone by the missing Malaysian airline, and there is a strange gay footnote to this. You may remember, those of you who watched the show for a long time, that we've been following for many years the story of the opposition leader in Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim, who has been accused by the ruler of Malaysia of homosexuality as a way to disenfranchise him as an opposition leader.
And to try him for sodomy. And he's been convicted, and it's been overturned, and now he's back on trial again.
No, he's
right?
been convicted again,
right.
and he's been sent to jail again.
Right.
He's been in and
for
out of
sodomy.
jail. Yeah. So yes, for sodomy, which he denies, may or may not be true. But all of this is a political move on the part of the president. So
what's the worst thing you can call somebody in Malaysia?
Exactly.
A sodomite.
And in in 80 other countries. And parts of the United States. So this airline story comes along, and now they're saying the pilot, as they debate whether he was involved or what the heck happened to this plane, he was a supporter of Anwar Ibrahim.
Which means that he's a supporter of democracy and against the current ruling dictatorship, basically.
But somehow we end up in a lot of these stories.
Yes, we do.
In the latest Russia news, a couple of little things. First of all, a transgender Russian man has won U.S. asylum. This is a big deal and a terrific case. And a lot of what I'm hearing is that a lot of what's going on with Russia, with Uganda, with Nigeria, Cameroon, lots of these countries, as has historically been true of Jamaica too, it's all about immigration. It's about people getting out of these countries and needing support.
Desperate.
Meanwhile, the big gay bar in Moscow, Central Station, is closing finally.
Well, it was firebombed with everything. I mean, there were many attacks against it.
Yeah. And Masha Gessen, the great lesbian Russian activist, says that corporations in Russia doing business in Russia are hypocrites and should be helping out with immigration.
It is getting desperate. All right. We've done with Russia?
Sure.
In Taiwan, there was an anti-gay rally there, marriage rally there, called Happy Family by the right-wing Christians on Sunday, and it led to a confrontation because 100 gay activists said that we want happy families too. So they came, and then at first they were resisted and pushed, then they were allowed in, and then they started a kiss in, and so they said that they want to have kids too, and all that kind of stuff.
And this proved so popular that when scores of students took over the parliament in a sit-in, in a disagreement about trade agreements with China, there was a gay kiss-in the middle of that, too.
And I was encouraged to read that on our side there at the rally, there were 2 Taiwanese Tibetan nuns who were supporting same-sex marriage.
And I was encouraged to read that Amnesty International has given its Human Rights Award to a lawyer from Cameroon who defends LGBT people in Cameroon.
Okay.
Britain has started recognizing same-sex couples married elsewhere. Actual same-sex weddings start at the end of this month.
March
in
29th.
Britain. Yes, all right.
But you can get on board for that.
AIDS news.
Well, there was a very interesting report out of the CDC. I thought it was going to be some sort of a study about woman-to-woman transmission, but it's just that they really have documented one case of woman-to-woman transmission because there's just not that many that they can document because there's so many complicating factors. But they did say in this case it's rare, but this case is very, very likely that it was a partner who would offer meds and therefore they shared sex toys, oral sex, da-da-da-da-da.
Well,
at times rough, they said.
Well, one woman, HIV positive, had been on medication but stopped taking her medication, and therefore her virus had rebounded, and she had
shot up.
It was not undetectable. It was quite active. And then her HIV negative partner was a blood donor. She sold her blood a lot, and so she had frequent records of her HIV status. So she went in at one point, she was negative, and then shortly thereafter she went through the whole flu-like symptoms episode, went and got tested, and that test turned out negative, but a few days later she went back to give blood, and then she tested positive. So so they've really got the details nailed down. And so the point is that anyone can transmit or acquire HIV if you are doing things like having unprotected sex, sharing sex toys.
Right.
They were having sex during their periods, so there was blood involved. There were a lot of risk
Safety
factors.
first.
Yeah.
And of course, if people do take their meds and get down to undetectable levels, it's not a blank check for unprotected sex, but
it's a lot better.
It's a lot better.
I want to thank our associate producer, Bill Bowman, who did a great job at the New York Public Library last night, running a panel on gay and AIDS activist history.
Attracted quite an audience of LGBT rights veterans.
Exactly. And there is going to be...
Going back to the early 70s.
Yep. And there's...
As Bill does. And before.
Yes. There's going to be they've held a series of panels in connection with an exhibit at the New York Public Library, and the last one is coming up on April 1st at 7 p.m. Women of ACT UP, and it's a very...
You're going to be on it?
No, I've been on enough of these panels. It's a very distinguished panel of half a dozen women of ACT UP.
Are you going to go?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, what's Women of ACT UP without Ann Northrup? I'm not trying to, come on.
I
All right,
get plenty of time to speak.
You're very modest.
But this is really going to be a stellar event. April 1st, 7 p.m. at the New York Public Library, Women of ACT UP. I'll be there. I'll be part of it. There is also next week, the next in the series of workshops at ACREA here in New York, the Living with HIV workshops, and this one's on HIV transmission and how treatment can prevent it. They give out Metro cards and snacks at these events, and it's at ACREA on Wednesday, March 26th from 1 to 3 p.m. You can call 212-924-3934 for more information about that.
And for those of you who remember, this is not an AIDS thing, the great gay journalist Doug Ireland of the Gay City News and so many papers and politics, his memorial service is Thursday, March 27th at the CUNY Graduate Center at 6 o'clock, and I will be there.
Entertainment news. I am happy to tell you that I finally caught up with the movie Philomena, which I've been wanting to see. That is gayer than the Dallas Buyers Club.
Well, I know. Not to give so much away, but everybody knows that, her son turns out to have been a gay guy who dies of AIDS and worked for Ronald Reagan.
And George Bush. It's quite a story, and it's a really well-done movie, and it's done in a way that is not predictable, that even if you know the details, it's just done in an original way.
Judi Dench, Steve Coogan.
Yeah, really, really well done. I would highly recommend Philomena, a really well-done movie, so please catch up with that.
Okay.
Now, to Andy's reviews.
Well, first in New York, I saw Bryan Cranston of, what's the name of that TV show?
Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. He's so good in that. He is the reason for seeing this thing about Lyndon Baines Johnson called All the Way. It is 3 hours, and it's just about the Civil Rights Act of 1964. That's all it's really about.
Wow.
I thought it was going to cover a lot of ground.
Well, to those of us
who
want to...
Vietnam,
If we want to put sexual orientation and gender identity and expression in the Civil Rights Act, do we have to see this play?
Well, of course, it deals with the way the Southern Democrats put women in the Civil Rights Act to try to stop it, and then it passed, which was one of the great sides. So all these stories are in there, but there were so many characters, and a lot of them get kind of cartoony, and that's what bothered me.
It's didactic.
It is didactic, and he is portrayed, he could be pretty miserable, Johnson, as we know. He was a war criminal.
Holding those dogs up by their ears.
Well, they didn't even put that in there. But, they've got Hoover, and they've got George Wallace, and everybody else. So, and they have Walter Jenkins, his chief aide, who was a gay guy.
Exactly.
And they deal with the whole gay thing of him getting arrested.
That's a bathroom.
Christopher Liam Moore is his name.
Now,
good history, important history.
Right. Now, we know that some of you are not heading to London to go to the theater, but it is always, always interesting to hear about your trips to the London theater.
Thank you, Ann. Let's see if I can hold your interest here. Let's see if I can hold. Well, there are a lot of gay themes. Plus, the first show I'm going to talk about, you can see in America because it's from the National Theater, and they have this NT Live. You go to ntlive.com, and you can find out where in your neighborhood
in a theater in your neighborhood.
In a movie theater, they do these wonderful videos of the shows. And in this case, the one that I saw, it's King Lear, by Shakespeare, by the way.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. Well, this is Simon. We got his picture up there. Simon Russell Beale on the left there is playing Lear. He is a marvelous actor, but this thing is done like modern dress, dictators, ferocity. It was almost too much, and I just thought it was it was directed by.
So we should not go to our local theaters to see this?
It's certainly of interest compared to everything else that's around.
And how often do people get to go to movie theaters to see King Lear?
That was at the Olivier Theater. Certainly, anyway, he was a meanie though, this Lear. Well, I never understood why he did what he did, dividing up his kingdom with his daughters. I mean, it just didn't make any sense.
Willing suspension of disbelief takes you only so far.
The show I most liked, I mentioned it last week, it's the 100th anniversary of World War I. Did you know that?
I hadn't thought about
the start of it. Well, it's a big deal in Britain, I mean, we were in it, but they really lost a lot of people.
Yeah.
So they had this play called Versailles at the Donmar Warehouse by Peter Gill, a gay playwright, older guy.
We're everywhere.
He tackles all the complexities and tragedy of the aftermath. The characters you see on the stage, the guy on the right, the left, Willem Lee, he's part of the Paris peace talks.
They're not twins?
They were lovers. The guy on the right, played by, I have to look him up, I'm not going to find it, Tom Hughes, they were lovers before the war. So he comes back as a ghost, but they don't mix it up and talk much about their relationship. They're debating German reparations and what are we going to do to, I mean, it's so intensely political and it goes on for 3 hours. I know it sounds kind of awful, but it was the best thing that I saw all week. There was never a dull moment.
What's it called?
It's called Versailles.
Ah, thank you.
Even though the second scene takes place in Paris.
Yeah.
So I also saw the second longest running show in London after The Mousetrap.
Yeah.
The Woman in Black. It's also a ghost story, and it elicits absolute shrieks from the audience. I have never heard such screaming in my life, and there were a lot of kids there, and I thought, what the hell? First of all, why is everybody going to this thing for 25 years? It's, but there was screaming. It's apparently, the book it's based on is a signed reading for everybody in the country. So this is often their introduction to theater.
Well, what's the story here?
Oh, it's what's the story? It's about it's the Woman in Black. She had a child that she gave up to this family and this kind of stuff and was mistreated. And I don't want to give it all away if you're going to see it. Anyway.
Okay.
The National Theater also revived Sheila Delaney's A Taste of Honey. This woman wrote this thing when she was 18.
Rita Tushingham.
And it was a movie of it, yes, in 1958. It's basically a mother-daughter conflict. What you see there is the young woman, the daughter, Kate O'Flynn. It's really a breakout performance as Jo. She's kind of an unpleasant young woman.
Yes.
And she has a gay friend played by Harry Heppel. The significance of this is, this was the first play cleared by the Lord Chancellor with a positive gay character in it. And they're pretty rough on him. But that's the historic significance. I didn't understand a lot of it, not because I'm that stupid, but because they use these Northern English accents, which was also true.
Of the movie.
The movie.
Yeah.
One that would not get past the Lord Chancellor now is a play called The Pass. We got a picture of it. Oh, there, hubba hubba. About a David Beckham-like character. That's Russell Tovey there on the left.
I was just going to say that guy looks just like Russell Tovey
I'm in this little theater, smaller than our studio here, and there's Russell Tovey in his underwear the whole time. And the other guy, do you recognize him?
He looks familiar.
He was the band leader in Downton Abbey.
Oh,
that's
yes.
Gary Carr.
Yeah. And
he plays a teammate. They play young teammates who are very competitive with each other. And of course, Russell Tovey goes on to become a star. The other guy goes on to become a landscaper or something. Anyway, it starts out really slow, but it's very surprising. And it's all about him justifying the closet, essentially. And this is how I got powerful, and this is what I'm going to do. And it's really kind of raw and good. He's a very good actor.
And it again is called?
The Pass, which
Thank
has
you.
a lot of connotations.
Yes.
Men are also stripping, and there's a big gay subplot in The Full Monty. We got a picture of them. You know, it was a great movie, I think.
Yes.
And I think a very decent musical.
Never saw the musical.
But this is a stage version of the movie by the same guy who wrote the movie. And it works less well for me, again, these northern British English accents. But the crowd, they attract that crowd, and they loved it. And Sidney Cole, who plays Horse, the British African guy, is very good, very, very good. He really livens it up. Then I saw 1984. You remember by George Orwell?
It seems so strange that we are now in 2014 talking about 1984 as 30 years ago when it used to be, in our youth.
That's right.
The great,
way far ahead,
scary future.
And of course, the future we've inherited is much scarier than what Orwell dreamed up.
Yes, in many ways.
And, you know, I have to say, I felt really assaulted. This was at the Almeida, one of my favorite houses. I felt really assaulted by the strobe lighting at you that really you couldn't even watch the stage at times. And I thought, again, the characters were kind of cartoony. And then I went home and read the London reviews. They loved it. 4 stars, 5 stars, and it's going to the West End. So, and with those kind of reviews, it may come over here. 1984.
You said a bad word.
I mumbled it under my breath. Then I went to a little pub, a little theater above the pub, and saw something called Rachel's Cafe at the Old Red Lion, because it was on a great subject, a transitioning cafe owner in Bloomington, Indiana, named Rachel, played by Graham Elwell there. And it's a very compelling topic, but
Is the playwright American or
English, who was doing a internship or studying in Bloomington, studying playwriting?
Okay.
I felt that it needed a lot more drama, but I would like to go to her cafe someday in Bloomington.
Okay.
And then finally I saw a great revival of Samuel Beckett's Happy Days with the great Juliet Stevenson. I hope that she's up for bringing that over here.
Now,
was that at all interesting?
Absolutely. I'm so compelled by your descriptions that I want to know if The Pass is getting good reviews and is popular because it's an all-star cast.
Well, of course, it was a great cast. Including the kid who played the bellhop was the guy who played the young boxer in Upstairs, Downstairs, and he has a surprisingly hilarious role. So, I mean, you know, I do hope that makes it over here. I hope they bring the whole cast.
Well, it just makes me want to go to London immediately. But instead, I'm going to go home because we have finished Gay USA for this week.
Thanks for listening, folks.
And congratulations to my friend Katie Brenny, and thank you for bringing that lawsuit.
Yes, and you can write me at andyhum@AOL to get on our email list, and you can read my reviews online at gayusatv.org, maintained by our associate producer, Bill Ballman.
Who had his great triumph at the New York Public Library this week. We're just filling out a few seconds. We will see you next week. Thank you.